Okay, welcome back to the Sober Cappy channel on YouTube. Today I want to talk about moderation and the lack thereof. It's definitely something I've spoken to before. I can hear my antagonist, Matt, saying I'm repeating content, but I've never done one specifically, just quick topic on moderation. And my favorite thing to say is that moderation only works for people who don't need to try to moderate. It's so good. If you need to try to moderate, you can't moderate. It just comes naturally. They are normal drinkers. They're take it or leave it drinkers. They don't experience cravings or strong urges to drink like we do. It's just that simple. And this came up because I was filming a recent podcast, Cappy Hour podcast, coming soon. And I was telling my buddy, Tom, how, and we all of us say it, we all set rules of how we're going to moderate. For a huge one is only beer and wine. No hard alcohol. For me, it was just wine because I wouldn't even drink beer because it wasn't efficient enough. So I'd only drink wine. And the most I would ever make that would be 2 weeks. And usually a lot less because I would get sick of the sweetness. And I'd get sick of chugging it because I would have to chug so much wine, when the disorder's that far progressed. And to compete with vodka, 40% alcohol, and drinking wine that's 12, 13%, you had to drink a lot of it. So that would never last more than a week or two. Other ones, one of my favorite is I'm only going to drink Dr. McGillicuddy's other than wine because that's only 24% alcohol. I think it's so funny every time I say that versus vodka, which is 40%. And then I thought of another one. I'm only going to drink a handle of vodka every 3 days, which I would rarely make. Often need to augment that with a few nips here and there just to make sure I had enough. And I Googled it. A handle, which is 1.75 liters, that's the big bottle, has 39 shots in it. That's 13 shots per day. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I'd be very lucky to stretch that over 3 days. Sorry, Mom. But my favorite when I was talking to him was that I said I would only drink in public settings, appropriate public settings. Essentially, only drink in a bar. Maybe even said only gonna drink if I have to pay for the drink. So that particularly meant no drinking at home. And I lived right in the heart of Boston for 15 plus years. So, it was a combination of having alcoholism and being thrifty that I would always say, well, why should I go to a bar for my first drink when I could just have the first drink much cheaper at my own place? Combined with the alcoholism where I would need to, drink before I even went into the shower. And then particularly when I get out of the shower, I didn't even like looking in the mirror to get ready to go out. Nor did I ever want to go out. So I would have to drink to get me motivated because of the vicious cycle, because I drank the day before typically. So crazy. But anyway, yeah, that was my favorite rule. I would only drink at a bar when I had to pay for it. Never lasted long, if at all. Maybe once. I mean, the times I would not pre-drink, I would end up having the greatest nights. I would drink slower the entire night. And I would think, this is fantastic. I'm never going to pre-drink again. You know how many times I actually didn't pre-drink? Honestly, I think maybe 5 ever. I mean, insane. That was a huge, horrible habit that started when I got divorced 20-something years ago and first got on Match.com. And first probably bad date I had, I was probably really looking forward to it initially. I remember actually when I was even married, we drove by I don't know if it was a sign or what, but I knew that there was an 8-minute dating going on where you just meet different people for 8 minutes at a time. You get set up with one person at a time. And I thought that must be the coolest thing. And I was so jealous that I couldn't do it. And as soon as I got separated, I went to one of those events. I even ran into my estranged wife's best friend who she used to live with. So I practically quasi-lived there on occasions. And she was at that event. Luckily, I hadn't signed up yet, or I hadn't registered. Miraculously, I think I got there early to drink, which I normally didn't do. I drank at home. But I told her, I was just here to check it out, observe. And yeah, I observed and peaced out. But anyway, I digress. The point is, we cannot moderate. I Googled about what is the 20-minute rule for drinking less? And it's after you've finished one drink, take a 20-minute break between drinks. And ideally, drink water as well. And I was always very good at that. 1 drink, 1 water. But just pound water for 20 minutes. And it says waiting 20 minutes can reduce cravings and keep you from going overboard. Yeah, good luck with that. So any of you think you can moderate? Do you really think once you get back in the throes of it that you can only drink? I mean, you can go 20 minutes between drinks, because that's just not how we operate. One way I explain it to normal people is all we think about is the next sip, the next sip, the next sip, till we get halfway through the drink, and then we're already thinking about the next drink. You know, one thing that really helped me quit, my buddy James said to me, because I kept telling him about my moderation plans, and he said, "Wait, the problem is you think this is in your control, and it's not." And that really helped me. One of my favorite podcasts, Sober Powered, she talks about with an addicted brain, the brain develops and changes. Again, it causes these highly focused and intense cravings that leads to compulsion and obsession. And the changes are long lasting and cannot be cured, so that you can never drink moderately. There's nothing to be learned. Our brains are just different from normal drinkers. You know, and that's another YouTube I have. There is no cure for alcoholism. So, you know, I'll end it by saying a guy named Chris has a great video, perhaps I'll link to it, where he basically says the same things I just did. He said, if we could drink moderately, we'd already be doing it. He says, oh, you know, all these people get newly sober and then they have this epiphany that I can moderate and still be just as productive and feel as good as I do now. And I love it, an epiphany, because yeah, we've all had it. Many of us still have it. Thank God. I famously talked about, I once quit for 3.5 years before thinking I could try to drink normally or moderate. And you know what? The good news was I could drink normally. The bad news, not for long. And there is something miraculous. In the first week or two, you somehow can maintain some willpower to moderate, but it does not last. And that voice comes roaring back, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it gets deadly. I've shared that since I tried to drink normally 6 years ago, you know, I knew within 2 weeks max that I could not do it. But surprisingly, it's even harder to get sober again after a long period of sobriety. It's crazy how this works. But I say it's been 6 years of hell since, or at least 5, because I'm coming up a month away from being a year sober. And a woman shared just the other day that for her, she was in 10 years of purgatory, also known as moderation. I recently shared that I lost a very good friend in my sober community, and a large part of it, you know, I don't know every detail. I know it was an accidental death, but I know she was continued trying to taper, essentially moderate, and she never got to the point that she could just give it up and get a day count going. And I do believe that was a very dangerous thing. And what happens, no matter how long you might go, eventually you're gonna drink inappropriately and very heavily. You know, we just drink at inappropriate times and at any time that we're looking to cheat the system. Stressful events, etc. That voice comes roaring back. It senses weakness. It pounces on it. And I do believe a lot of people that die of alcohol poisoning were in this scenario where they may have quit for a long time and came back and thought they could drink moderately and maybe even did for a while. And then it got worse and worse. And then one night, maybe multiple nights, they just really pushed the limit. I have another friend in my previous sober community. I'll end with this. He was told he really drank so heavily one night. He said he's lucky he didn't die. And if he did it again, he would die. And unfortunately, a couple weeks later, it happened again. And he did, unfortunately, pass away. And I truly believe he probably just thought he was going to have a couple drinks that night. And that's what happened. This is a life or death thing. We all need to be deathly afraid of this deadly drug and never try to moderate. We can't do it. And I'll end with that. Moderation only works for those who don't need to try to moderate. All right, that'll do it. As always, please like, share, subscribe, and remember, stronger, sober. Thanks.